Welcome in, everybody, to another edition of the Go 24/7 podcast. I'm Matthew Brune, and joining me is Sonny Shipp and Shea Dixon. We're here to talk about the LSU basketball team that is now 8-0 on the season. The last podcast we did on the basketball team, I believe, was after the first game against UL Monroe with the whole staff. We were all excited, obviously, to see this new team, and now we're about a month and change into the season, and we've seen this team go through the goods and even some bad, even though they are undefeated to this point. If you ask Will Wade after the game yesterday, there was plenty of bad to talk about. But which I guess is a shameless plug to go check out our YouTube and check out the interview, the post game presser there. But guys, we're going to talk about. We'll touch on the Ohio game first, and then we'll get into some overall takeaways, and then what we think about this team going into conference play. But let's start with that Ohio game. Just give our quick takeaways. We don't have to go in too much depth because we have plenty, like I said, to talk about overall. But where do y'all want to start with the Ohio game? Y'all want to start with the good or the bad? Y'all positive or negative today?
I can start
Negative.
bad. Where do we start?
We're all negative
Y'all.
today. Great.
No, you
Go ahead,
guys
Shay.
just do the. Well, you shamelessly plugged it. The press conference. You want me to do the Wade press conference? It's first he just sits there real mad, and then Cobble will ask him a question, and then realize how mad he is. So then he'll just start to stutter through the question to
Yeah.
cut them off, and then will do the. We're not good enough. We're not good enough. Y'all sat out there. Y'all loved it. 7-0, 8-0. Y'all were having fun. I told y'all. I was the only one who said it. We're not good enough. Let me think. 17 turnovers. 68-49 in shots. They shot 20 more shots than we did. You're not going to win. I don't care.
Unsustainable, he said.
Y'all can be happy about it. That it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable.
Yep.
And then Matty B will ask a question about the point guards to try to defuse them. I don't know. They're all right. They're fine. They're all right. Still turned it over a lot.
Yeah. So that was a lot
He
of
was
fun.
pissed.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to finally see that side of him because I'd been to some practices and I'd seen him flash. I mean, obviously in practice it's a different animal, but in the post game pressures after the wins, it was like, okay, they're getting through it. We didn't get to talk to him after the Penn State and Wake Forest games, obviously, and then this one it was like they're tied. Just for some context for those who maybe don't know, they go up 14-0 in the first 8 minutes of the game. They end up leading 21-3 10 minutes into the game, and then Ohio goes on a run to tie the game at 37-37 with 14 and a half minutes left, I believe it is. And then Ohio State ends up putting the game away and wins 66-51. Just a really weird roller coaster game. Sonny, what did you see from that one?
Well, it's like I didn't make a ton of posts because we were trying to decorate the tree last night while keeping up with the game. But listening to my son slamming doors and beating on the wall and stuff made me obviously realize things weren't going too good. So I started watching it a little bit. And he started kind of filling me in and everything. And it the way that LSU, the way that the players acted on the possession right before Will Wade called the timeout, when I think Ohio either tied to score or whatnot, and LSU just came down the floor. There was zero ball movement. There were nothing but heads looking down, and it was an embarrassment. It was an embarrassing effort that they had given over that 5 or 6 minutes, because when you look at LSU. And I'm huge. I'm a huge proponent of, the one thing that you can always control, regardless of how good you are, how good your opponent is intensity and effort. And I always lump those two things in together. And the intensity and effort that we had seen from LSU pretty much through the first 7 games, minus a couple of lapses that you're going to have dealing with a new team, had been pretty good for the most part. But I thought last night really just showed, the players got caught, I think, in a situation to where they jumped out on Ohio early, and it was almost like they thought the game was over when it was 14-0, because it was hard for LSU to climb back into that latter half of the first half. And they really need to get to the locker room, So I thought that the effort and the intensity, probably for about maybe a 6, 7, 8-minute span, was as bad as we have seen, even going back to last year. And last year, I was a big critic of the effort and the intensity that they showed in a lot of cases. And I thought last night it was really lacking. And if there's ever a situation where you want someone to go Bobby Knight on the floor, start throwing chairs, do what you got to do. I thought it was last night. So I was glad to see Will Wade, that he was so mad and so pissed off in the press conference, because I was looking and I was like, why is he just not going ballistic right now with the lack of energy that they're showing? So it was good to see it in the post conference, because I can only imagine that it was cranked up quite a few more notches in the halftime locker room.
Yeah, he said, I after the game, he said he was just trying to get through it, honestly. Like he has a 10-day break now before the next game, which is another reason why we wanted to get this podcast out, is there's 10 days before the next game against Georgia Tech, and that's where the reset's going to come. That's where the changes are going to come. You mentioned the effort. This team doesn't have what last year's team had, right? Last year's team had Javonte Smart, Cam Thomas, and Watford, who could just score the ball without blinking. They could just walk on the court and score 70 points. This team doesn't have that, as we'll talk about more in depth as we go in this podcast. But last night was the first time we're like, okay, guys, if you're not trying, you're going to lose. You can't just walk in and beat a decent Ohio team. Like, that's what it shows. Against SEC teams, it's going to be a battle every single night. And that's what I think they're going to have to realize. And I think they have realized it. Like you said, they've been good for the most part, I think, effort-wise. This was just the first time we've seen them really dip, and it really cost them.
Last night's effort, they probably don't regroup like they did against Ohio, and they're not able to just kind of flip that switch. I think if you're playing Auburn, you're playing Kentucky, Arkansas, even Tennessee, the upper echelon teams in the SEC, you're probably leaving last night with a 12 or 14-point loss. Because I don't think when they get in SEC play, I don't think that they'll just be able to flip that switch, and all of a sudden they'll be so much better athletically than their opponents, like they were last night.
Yeah. Anything else on the game, Shea?
Well, I mean, I think if you're also going to knock them and say it was a really bad game, it was their best start that they've had, and it was probably one of the better final 6 minutes they've had too. I mean, I think they got it.
That's true. Yeah.
I think they got it to 3 maybe, and it wasn't even a game the final 6 minutes. I mean, they played good defense the rest of the way. They hit all their free throws mostly the rest of the way. I know a couple guys missed one in there, but it wasn't like it went from a 20-point game to a 3-point game, and then quickly back to like a 12 or 13-point game and stayed there. So I know Wade was mad, and it's, fans can say it's frustrating seeing them get back, but it was never that close. I mean, Ohio never pulled ahead. Right when they got back within 3, they pushed it all the way back to double digits. So there's still, even when you're not perfect and you're beating an Ohio team who's a tournament team, I mean, that's a team that will go back to the tournament this year. It's funny, I was talking to earlier in the day, Jimmy Burrow, Joe's dad, coached at Ohio forever, I think like 20-something years as DC. And I texted him, I said, big game tonight. He said, yeah, it'll be the only one I don't root for, the Tigers. But he said, keep an eye on number 5, who I guess ultimately was Vanderplas. He said, kid's amazing. He'll shoot the lights out. I looked up, it was like 15 minutes in the game. He didn't even have a point. And then he just went off. So a huge part of them coming back was Vanderplas got hot. He hit like 4 threes in a row at one point, nothing but net. And then they got a little bit more in his face. I think they put Eason on him at one point, and that kind of quieted him down. But he was the real deal. Like, that's a good team. I mean, that is a team that will get into the tournament, that can win a game, that may win, have a chance to win their conference, and has some older guys, especially a guy like Vanderplas. He can go out there against anybody and get you double digits. Like, that's no big. You saw he played last night. So that's a good test for him. That's why you have Belmont, Liberty, Ohio, all of these teams on the preseason slate. Those are the teams that play really sound basketball and have a lot of experience.
Yeah. Just to quickly, I mean, they've gotten to 8-0 by basically winning every game they've won every game by 16 or more points before the Emerald Coast Classic, which I think we can talk about when we talk about the overall look at this team, where they went and played Penn State and they went to overtime. Offense struggled in that game as well. The defense really pulled it out. They got a lot of offensive rebounds in that one. End up winning 68-63 in overtime. Then they played Wake Forest on Saturday, the same day that LSU football played A&M. So I watched that game on and off. Shea and I were watching that on and off in the press box. They win 75-61. They were in control for most, if not all, of that game. And then the Ohio game. Now, so if we look at this team, I know we started kind of pessimistic. I think Shea did a good job bringing it back around. Let's talk about the defense because, good Lord, this team can still defend. I mean, this team is ranked 4th in KenPom in defense, and that is adjusted with the competition. So KenPom has the raw defensive rating, and then they adjust it by strength of schedule, and they're still number 4 in the country, despite not having played a high like Ohio State type team. The number 1 in steal percentage, number 3 in block percentage, number 5 in 2-point percentage defense. They're only allowing teams to shoot 27% from 3. This team is just still incredible defensively, and they're switching their defensive ball pressure. Mwani Wilkinson, Brandon Murray, we knew those guys were going to be big, and they've really superseded even my expectations for them. And so obviously you bring in Tari Eason and Eric Gaines off the bench, and even Alex Fudge, I think, is a solid defender when he's understanding the concept that they're running. So the defense is just incredible. I mean, not for nothing, Ohio shot, I think 20 what was it? 26% from the field last night. And that's just kind of a microcosm of what it's been this entire season. The one thing Ohio did do well is they didn't turn the ball over that much, only 12 turnovers. And that's what LSU's been feasting on this entire year. Like I said, number 1 in the country in steal percentage.
Yeah, and I think when you start talking about defensive laden teams, like I think this team is for LSU, I was trying to look, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, just kind of just pulling some figures off the top of my head. I was trying to think of an LSU team that really played, was as good defensively as this team is right here. And Shea might be able to fill in some gaps here. But, I mean, I almost go back to like when they had Stromile Swift and those guys. You had some rim protectors on that team. You had that type of long, athletic players like this LSU team has right here. And I'm sure there may have been some in between there, but I think that this is easily Will Wade's best team defensively that he has had at LSU. I don't recall a team under Johnny Jones, really even under Trent Johnson, that jumps out at me as teams that were just so disruptive, and not just disruptive, not just having a guy in the paint who can alter shots, not just having a strong number 4 who's crashing the boards and who can also slide over, play the 5. I'm talking about all 5 positions on the floor. That when you put Tari Eason out there, when you have Eason spelling Reed early in the game, whether Gaines is in or Murray is in, although I do think that Eric Gaines is a really, really terrific player defensively, as long as he stops shooting from the arc, then everything will be great with him. But as far as his ability to penetrate and play in defense, I love what he brings to the floor. But just 1 through 5, when they put Tari Eason in there, you really have a team that when they switch as much as they like to do, and Matthew, you've done a good job of pointing that out from a schematic standpoint, that there's not a liability on the floor. That even Tari Eason, if Tari Eason jumps out on a big 2, or even some point guards, he can keep them at bay long enough to where to where he's looking to pass instead of looking to get to the rim. So, I think from a defensive standpoint that this team is just, absolutely lights out. And that's probably why last night why I was such a critic last night, because the effort and the intensity that they show on the defensive end, was just missing for that spell.
Yeah, it's almost too like the only time that they're going to get with switching into any troubles if Gaines gets onto someone that's not a guard. I mean, we saw it last night with Ohio. Like the number of points they had, it was almost like Gaines knew I'm not going to do anything, and Days and them weren't getting over there quick enough, and it's sort of easy bad. In fact, Ohio missed a couple of like point blank shots when they had Gaines on them, which obviously would have made it a little bit closer. But I think they'll be defensively. Obviously, isn't the worry that it's offense, right? Is that where You don't have a double-double guy on your team. You don't have, like Matthew said, last year, the offense wasn't – like I think they have a bigger upside almost on offense this year because last year there was no movement. It was when it was like ISO basketball. And if Cam Thomas or Smart or Watford got the ball in their hands, notably Smart and Watford, they were going to shoot it because if they gave it up, it wasn't getting back to them at any point. So they all three knew that they had to get their points. Every time they got it, they just, went for it. So you can spread out the scoring a lot more. I almost think there has to be a key piece to this, right? Like, is Fudge the key piece? Because he's probably the one guy is he averaging 5-6 points a game. He can get you double digits here and there, but you're really only playing him 16, 17, 18 minutes. So it's not like he's going to have enough time to really get up there. It's either like you have to have those couple of guys that are going to just go on fire, or you really better cross your fingers that you're spreading these points out to where even on a lot of these nights, Milwaukee's got 6 or 8. I mean, he's a guy who sometimes may give you 0, and you won't be upset with it because he's out there to play defense, and you've got other guys who can move it offensively. So I'm curious. They've just done a good job. Yeah, they've beaten everybody by a lot, but it's because everybody has been getting 8 or more. They're going to get to a point where a couple of guys are cold, and they're going to have guys either carry them or really have guys step off the bench like Fudge.
Yeah, that's going to be the interesting thing is the offensive slumps. But I want to highlight Tari Eason just a little bit more. I think Sonny did a good job talking about his defensive prowess. I mean, Shea, you texted me last night, Shea. You were like, his defensive anticipation's off the charts, and it 100% is. The way he's able to anticipate and the length that he has to make the plays and the speed that he has. I think an underrated aspect of his game is his quickness, because we not only see it on defense, but on offense, he's taking people to the rim and he's getting there with some ease. And it's a little deceitful because of how big he is, but he's getting a step on anybody that guards him that's over like 6'5". So I've been really impressed with him. I think his shooting is going to come around. I don't like the mid-range jumpers as much from him. I don't think his shot allocates itself to having a lot of touch on it, but the 3-point shot's going to be there for him. I'm comfortable with that. And I mean, his ability to get to the rim offensively has been huge for this team, because the point guards, while I think they've been fine, haven't been, they've needed to be spelled at a couple times, right? There are times where you want a wing to create, and when Darius Days is hit or miss at this moment, which we'll get into him in a second, I think Tari Eason's done a fantastic job. I mean, he's led the team in scoring the last like 2 or 3 games. He's outstanding, and the behind the back dunk that he had, I mean, he has a highlight like that every night now. It's incredible.
That was so bogus because Gaines had just thrown down a sick dunk, and then he immediately stole that thunder on like the next possession. Let a man just breathe for a second. Tari with the behind the back, you probably weren't here for it, Matty B, was like Jarrell Martin's, probably the second best dunk since then. Back in the day when Jarrell Martin is in the NBA now, in the middle of like a tight game against Florida and Billy Donovan and them, pulled a fast break between the legs jam when everyone was like, Jesus, dude, don't try that. Keep that to open gym. Don't bring that to the game. That was what Eason, when he went for the behind the back, I was like, oh, Lord, threw it down. Place went nuts. But, yeah, he's a beast. I'm looking for this. I saw a tweet, and let me see. I'll try to find it. But it was something about Tari Eason sort of like splits and where his numbers were. And here we go. Tari Eason's an elite wing defender with plus shot indicators. Since 2008, only 4 NCAA players have put up a block percentage over 5, a steal percentage over 3, BPM over 10, and 3-point out of 100 over 3. They were Matisse Thybulle, Zion, Chuma Okeke, and Tari Eason. So, I mean, that's the sort of company you're keeping here if you've got that sort of athleticism, but you're also a scorer who can play defense. I mean, that's, like I said, I texted you last night in the middle of the game when I think Ohio was like on a fast break, when he had gotten the ball stolen from him, and you could just tell by how he was drifting back midcourt. He was like, oh, he's just going to block this dude. And he timed it perfectly, blocked him. Then dude got it back and went up, and he had blocked him again on the way down. It was like, oh, my gosh, dude, he's just got this. He's got an innate sense of, how people are going up with the ball, and, boy, he can swat it. I mean, if you're in that group, Matisse, Zion, and Chuma, you're pretty good.
Yeah. All right. Any other positives before we go to some question marks here? Sonny, do you have anything else that's a positive here? I mean, from an 8-0 team, albeit strength schedule is not amazing, but hell, I mean, I think To be fair, I'm gonna go. I mean, I think Efton Reed's been good, but I still think Eric Gaines is still just a real plus for this team. Even in the tournaments, even in the tournament turnovers that he had, I still think just the energy that he has on defense alone just really does wonders for this team. So I'm gonna go with him, and I think, like you said, Sonny, as long as he stops shooting, I think we're looking good.
Yeah, and when you look at I'm critical. I mean, critical of their stretch last night. This 8-0 start is, oh man, I've got to go. I mean, there's not a team that jumps out at me off the top of my head, and I've been watching LSU basketball forever. It seems like, but there's not a team that jumps out at me that has played as well as this one has from the start of the season to this point of the season right here. He illustrated it perfectly with the analytic of how many points they've won each game by. And I mean, that's impressive in itself. And while the competition that they played, I know Belmont, even Ohio, you could toss Penn State in there. Um, the teams, even Texas State, some of these teams that they played,
Liberty.
LSU has had a much softer non-conference schedule. They've had a bunch of soft non-conference schedules to start the season. But I think when you look at it, if you take the name recognition out of it and you look at it to where you're really looking at the players and you're looking at the X's and O's and what they have coming back from last year, this has not been an easy non-conference stretch that they played right here. And I think it's going to prepare them nicely for when SEC play, when that gets here. The one thing that kind of worries me, and we touched on this when I touched on this when we talked about Adam Miller being out and who's going to step up. You put Adam Miller into this rotation right here, you're going a solid 9 deep. I really think that by the time February gets here, they need to be far enough along to where someone can come in and just give them something. Give them some kind of minutes, give them just something
You mean
to
as the eighth man, or do you mean
as the ninth man.
Oh, okay.
Because with Adam Miller, I thought that with Adam Miller, they're going 9 deep. Right now, they're a solid 8 deep.
Yeah.
They got that solid 8. But who is someone who can come in and just give them, if it's 3 or 4 minutes a game?
I
If
don't
it's a
know. I don't
spell
know if they
someone
have.
in the
I don't know if
post,
they have
I
that
don't know
on
if they do either. And
Sharif.
that's
If he
and that's
comes
kind
back,
of who's that?
Sharif, if he comes back.
Possibly if he can come back. But I think that that's what they're reeling. If you start looking at, okay, what does this team really need? I think that's what it needs. And I think that ninth person would also, it doesn't have to necessarily come from a person, but it needs to come in something in the form of, could it be Xavier Pinson, becoming a better 3-point shooter than he's been early on, because he hasn't been good early on. He's missed a lot of shots. Brandon Murray, he very, very, very streaky, even though he hasn't really gotten on that huge streak, but I think he's a streaky shooter. And I think that, because like Shea mentioned, one night you're going to have 1 or 2 guys who are not on. So who's going to pick up that slack? Can a Pinson come in? Can a Pinson pick up the slack? Can Brandon Murray pick up the slack? I don't have a lot of confidence right now that there is that one guy who can do that. I think it's going to have to kind of come collectively.
Yeah.
And that's what really, and man, that's why I really hate the fact that Adam Miller, not only do you have a 5-star out of high school on the bench, guy who played in what was it, the junior Team USA, played at Illinois, has a high ceiling, but he's on the bench for you right now, and that's just, I think that that's the difference. And I think this is a legitimate top 25 team. I think the AP poll, the coaches poll, I think they just keep missing on it every week, and it's only a matter of time before they get there. But the difference between being a top 25 team and a team capable of, being on the cusp of that top 10, Adam Miller on this team right here puts LSU on the cusp of that top 10, in my opinion.
I've got a hot take. I think that the Adam Miller outlook, or kind of wish back, is some of the most overrated thought process ever.
No, I
is what I
disagree
think.
100% with
think.
you. Go ahead. Go ahead.
This dude was playing 20 minutes a game last year and averaged less than an assist a game and averaged 8 points and 2 boards.
At Illinois.
What is he going to do right
true
now?
Freshman in the Big Ten.
At Illinois.
Okay, and Brandon Murray's a true freshman playing 28 minutes and getting 8.5, 3. And Brandon Murray's stats right now are identical to what he did last year.
I'm telling you.
There's this line of thought, though, that Pinson and Gaines are like falling off in distribution. And if they had Miller wouldn't even have been the point guard, though. Miller would have been a 2, and then Murray would just be not playing as much. So
Murray would be coming off the bench too right now.
Well, Murray would come off the bench, but I don't think that Adam Miller would have made this team like light years better. Like, I think that this team could be as good as they were without Adam Miller. Like, they've got pieces. They go 8 deep. I mean,
but Adam Miller gives you
7.
If someone gets hurt, Adam Miller
a game.
Yeah.
Well, no doubt.
Yeah, and that's what it, and that's where I kind of yeah. And that's kind of where I'm talking about.
I just think that people are kind of thinking about Adam Miller like he was some like NBA draft pick this year or something. Like, come on now. I mean,
yeah,
you're right.
I mean, he averaged 8 and 2 or whatever.
But let's say that 8 and 2 goes up to 11 and 3 or 11 and 4 this year, and then it goes up to, like, let's say it takes Darius Days' climb from his freshman year to where he is now. Each year, I mean, by the time he's a junior, all of a sudden now you're talking 14 or 15. You know what I mean? Wow. So it's not that Adam Miller is Superman right now, but it's that Adam Miller would have been a very good piece to this team. And then next year, when you lose a Darius Days, and then you've got a guy, Adam, coming in that you could build off of with Adam Miller, who might give you 10 or 11 a game this year, that's where I think more of him being a Superman type of player, like you say, it would be down the road. It wouldn't be this year on this team. He would definitely just be a role player this year on this team, but a very good role player, I think.
I think I would also, and we could also say too, Gaines is probably the best on-ball defender they've had at LSU in a while at the guard spot. Murray's a really good on-ball defender, and Pinson's right with them in terms of a couple steals a game. So I think with Miller, you're missing the offense, right? That defensively, or you're missing just the body, that you would have been 9 deep then, because defensively, I'm not sure that they're in such like a worse spot. We've said it all along that I think the biggest thing with Miller, and like Sonny said, injuries, that could be one thing. If Pinson or Gaines get into any foul trouble, or Murray, they're kind of screwed because you've only got 3 guards in the whole team right now. So that's going to be big, right? It's just keeping those 3 out of foul trouble.
Parker Edwards.
Yeah, he'll get in. Let's look at Parker's averaging.
Knock on wood.
Matty B can't get away from Parker Edwards.
Knock on wood. All right. I'll wrap up the Adam Miller point and then lead into another point. Just saying, I disagree with both y'all. I actually do think he would be the best offensive player on this team by a pretty wide margin. I think he'd lead the team in scoring. And I think, and that goes into a different discussion where I do think it would put them on the fringes of 10 to 15 range with him. And I think the offense, and this can go into a bigger point, the offense is so reliant on everybody pretty much being on the same page right now and everybody clicking, and also their defense fueling their offense. We've seen when this team gets in a half court type of game, and when they just get in the half court in general against anybody, it can be tough at times. And I think having that one guy in Adam Miller who would be able to come off ball screens and score a lot more effectively than Xavier Pinson, obviously Brandon Murray and Mwani Wilkinson and Eric Gaines. I think from a guard perspective, he would give this team something very, very different. The only practice I went to when I watched Adam Miller, I was like, yeah, that guy's the best offensive player on this team by a pretty wide margin. And we've seen it, right? Everybody else, Tari Eason's leading this team in scoring at this point. Like, Darius Days had his good games, and we'll talk about him, but he's obviously fallen off. Tari Eason might be the best offensive player on this team, like on a consistent basis as far as finishing, and what he creates. You have Darius and you have Xavier, but I think Adam Miller is by far would have been the best offensive player on this team. So let's talk about concern here. Offensively, do you think that it is sustainable in what they're doing right now? Does it give you a lot of cause for reserve going to the SEC? And I mean, to me, it is a little worrisome how much they rely on turnovers to create points for them, because when you play better teams, they're not going to turn the ball over as much. Like we saw Ohio, they didn't turn the ball over as much. Go. Who
Yeah,
wants?
Ohio didn't turn it over really at all, and the half-court offense kind of sucked. It was a lot of just standing around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think a hope to the offense. And again, if 7 of the 8 guys you have in your rotation all play 20-something minutes, then yeah, you're reliable. You're relying on across the board that they're all doing something for you. Like I said, even last night, Milani gets you 8, and
Yeah,
you know it's happening. It's a forgetful 8, but he'll get you 8 points, and it'll be a difference maker here and there. I think that and I don't know what, like you say, Miller's would have been the best scorer on the team. Okay, is he a 20-point game guy? Because like you said, right now, Tari Eason's at like 14, 15 a game, and he can lead the team in scoring. I think Days actually might.
Days
leads. Yeah, Days leads the team, but that's skewed a good bit because of how much he went off in a couple of those games.
Monroe.
I would also think that then, without having Miller, they've been forced, and they'll be forced more, especially with teams that don't turn the ball over and they just can't run and take the ball, steal it, and go down and dunk it. But if you're kind of cutting out fast breaks, you're going to get more into a half-court offense where more guys you're going to have to work the ball around, more guys are touching it. And I think as you get into SEC play, all those guys will become a little bit more comfortable with how they get their points every game. Not one of those things like, for instance, I go back to last year when you saw if you've got a big 3 carrying them, everyone knew that, okay, we just need Days to do something now. And if Days can get 10 points, we'll win every game because these 3 are going to get you 75. And then if Days can throw 10 in, you're good. I think it's understood right now that all the guys know, like, I got to go out and get 8 a night. I got to go out and get something out there and put 3 guys into double digits. It'll be 10, 14, and 14 or whatever. And normally that's Eason and Days, like you said. But I would think that I'm not worried about it unless we don't see them continue to develop on that end. Like, I would say Gaines, I wouldn't say Pinson's there yet. We've seen little splashes, but I would say Gaines and Murray are probably giving more on the offensive end than people thought that they would right out of the gate.
Definitely.
And if you can just keep going with that, then those guys will feel better about what they can do every night. Let shots come to you. Like I said, like Sonny said, Gaines' biggest issue is when you're going down, especially in the half court, and he just goes down and shoots a 3. It's like we haven't passed the ball to anybody. Nothing's been set up yet, and you're not even open. And now you've jacked up a 3 and wasted a possession. If you get to eliminating all that, I think they'll be fine on offense. I'd be like Wade, though. If that continues, you're pissed because they looked awful in the half court last night. And what did they shoot? Probably like 20% from 3. Certainly were in the 40s on field goal range, and they had like 4 offensive boards. Like probably 3 or 4 of the rebounds hit the floor before the Ohio guy got it. So yeah. I would say on offense, you're worried about scoring and all that and consistency. Yeah, but boy, they need to get aggressive on the offensive end, especially on the boards, because Ohio was bodying them. Not even bodying them last night. They just weren't even around to get any rebounds. It was weird.
Y'all would have loved the broadcast last night. John Brady, Ohio, and I forget the kid's name, but I do remember he had he was shooting like 18% from the arc. And oh man, I think he took like 3 or 4 or pretty early in the game. Missed all 4. I think like 3 of them may not have even hit the rim, may have grazed the net or something. And John Brady goes, and there's that 18% 3-point shooter again. And you wonder, why does he keep shooting? So when you talk about Eric Gaines, that's what made me think of it with that, with him coming down the court and just jacking up a shot that, last year with Cam Thomas, there's a chance he might make those. Whereas with Gaines, he hasn't shown that he can consistently do that. But that's my biggest concern going into, once they start getting into that SEC schedule, is that there's really no one between Gaines, Pinson, Murray. I mean, Days, really, you just go down the list. They're all spot up and shoot guys from the arc. There's no one. When Tari Eason, and Matthew, you made a good point that I agree with you. Tari Eason is your best guy at creating one-on-one and having success to get to the basket and have a very makeable shot. Eric Gaines with his Euro steps. I mean, that dude, the one thing he does have, he's got an unbelievable stride because that guy covers so much ground in those
Yeah,
Euro
he
steps.
takes like 2 steps from the 3-point line, and he somehow
exactly.
Yeah.
But so who is going to be that? Who's going to do that? When they get in SEC play, you need a 3-pointer. Darius Days is on the bench with 3 or 4 fouls. Who's going to be that guy? Brandon Murray, I think, could be that guy because he's 6'5". He's got a little bit of quickness. He's got some ball skills. He can pull up. He hasn't shown that he can make it, but he can create enough distance to where he can get a good look at the rim. But in SEC play, who's going to give them that that threat from outside? I don't think it's going to be Pinson because to me, I thought Javonte Smart last year, he had to really have a good spot up, and he was deadly when he did. But even when Xavier Pinson gets that spot up, he's just not, his shots are just off from the outside. It seems like they're short, whether it's the front of the rim, whether it's the side of the rim. We talked about Gaines. So that's my biggest thing is once they get in SEC play, who's going to be that guy when you come down and you need a 3 and Darius Days is not having a good day or Darius Days is on the bench? Who's going to be that guy? And that's another area that I think, by no means do I think that Adam Miller was going to light it up from 3-point range. But I saw enough of him to where he can dribble, he can create, and then he can pull up. And I think that that's another area that him not being there, that I think that he could have been that guy.
Yeah. Let's talk about Darius Days. Starts the season in the first 4 games of the year, going 17 of 29 from 3. In the last 4 games, he's gone 3 of 19 from 3. And the looks haven't really changed too much to me. Even in those ones that he made against UL Monroe, Texas State, and whatnot, a lot of those were contested as well. A lot of those were the catch and jab step and then rise up and shoot over defender, and they were going in early, and now they're not going in, and now even the open ones aren't really going in, and now he's gone to his post moves a little bit more. He's gotten in the paint, which I commend him for, but it's those little in between shots that are bothering me. I would wish, if either get all the way to the rim or drive and kick and penetrate, you can become a little bit more of a creator that way. I do give him credit. He got 13 rebounds last night, only 1 offensive, but still, I give him credit for at least fighting still and trying to find ways to help this team, even though his shots just has not been falling.
Yeah, I mean, really, and you look at his shots. With that Belmont game was probably the one where he was so cold that they just quit. Like he just quit shooting it. I think at one point, like he probably finished that game with 1 basket. I think he had hit a bunch at the free throw line that day. That's probably his worst game. But let's see, it's refreshing. Okay, so his last. Yeah, he was 1 of 6 against Belmont. So he's normally taking 10-plus shots a game. So they just quit shooting that game, get over it. Then 4 of 14, 5 of 13, 4 of 10. I mean, like you said, yeah, right. Is he just getting bad shots? Is it more contested now, or is it just not going in? Because you weren't always going to get ULM, but you would have thought you would have reached a spot where you're getting a little bit more consistent. And he'll give you 12 and 14 a night. It's just, he's having to manufacture it at the line or in different ways. He's just been cold shooting the ball really since Liberty. I mean, 3rd game of the season was probably the last time you felt good about what his field goal percentage was.
Oh yeah, Liberty was before McNeese. Sorry. You can even go. You can even. I had McNeese as the 3rd game of the season, but it's the 4th game of the season. So you can even say first 3 games of the year: 8 of 9, 3 of 6, 5 of 10. Since then, and this is from 3, 1 of 4, 1 of 4, 0 of 4, 1 of 6, 1 of 5. That's
awful.
A big drop.
Yeah. What I'd like to see Darius do more of is I'd like to see him instead of trying to, instead of jacking him up from outside to start a game, I'd love to see him do what he did last night, man. When the ball wasn't falling, he said, okay, I'm going to go back and I'm going to do what I did last year. And it was going down, getting the ball in the paint, some jump hooks, some easy little floaters. I'd like to see him do that to start a game, try to get you a couple of baskets inside. You get your opponent worried about that, and then you go and then you can step outside. Because what we've seen him do is that whether he's hot or whether he's cold, he's jacking it up from 3 until it gets to where, okay, this guy can't hit the side of a barn right now. So now I'm going to go take it inside. I'd like to see him develop, take that inside game and then bring that outside. And I think that would just add a new dynamic to, to the defenders having to defend him.
Yeah. I don't have anything else on Darius besides I agree with both of y'all. And I do think his defensive effort for the most part has been really good as well. But I'm not going to let us get out of here. Oh, do you have something to say, Shay, before we move on?
Well, yeah, I was going to touch. Are you about to talk about Efton Reed? I was just going to say.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm not going to let us. I'm not going to let us get
but
out of here without talking about Efton Reed at least a little bit because we haven't brought him up at all. I think he ended the game last night with, what is that, 12 points and 8 points. I'm sorry, 8 points and 7 rebounds. Where are we at with Efton Reed? Because it feels like sometimes he can be the best player on the court, and then sometimes it feels like I forget he's on the court.
I love him. I think he's the second best player on the team right there with Tari. I mean, I think, too, what you forget about Efton is as a freshman, how headsy he is. He basically fouled Vanderplas out of that game. He was about to get Carter into foul trouble at the end. Like, you can see those times where, like, he'll call for the ball, and whether it's just happening in a timeout and he's just cognizant of it, remembers to go out there and get it, but call for the ball, get a pump fake in, draw the contact, and you look up and the guy's got 4 fouls now. And it's like he's an 18-year-old realizing where the other guys are at with their fouls. He's coachable. He understands it. And I just think because we haven't gotten to see a true 5 that can score in a long time at LSU like this, back to the basket, taking someone on, whatever it is, but his variety of what he can do with both hands around the rim is nuts. I mean, that's a guy that I think they'll continue to lean on. And he's really smart about not getting into foul trouble. Like, you could tell he knows throughout the game kind of how to lay off guys, when he's going to go up and really contest a shot or not. He's smart about going up. He goes straight up a ton. He doesn't find himself getting cheap fouls. So I think he's probably one of the more exciting players I've gotten to watch this year, just because he's, for a big man that's a true freshman like that. I mean, Matty B, you and I looked at the basketball game. He was the number 3 center, and the number 1 and 2 centers are very, very good players. But I think he was like the number 30 player overall in the class or something like that, whatever it was, a 5-star, maybe in the 20s. Yeah. And we looked at it and you said he's probably playing himself into that 15 range of best freshmen in the country. And that's really, really good. I mean, you'll take it every night of the week. So I think he's going to be a real bright spot for him. He is an absolute beast.
And Efton Reed is never going to replace Gert Hammock as the best center to ever play at LSU. Let's just get that out of the way right now.
Yeah,
Gert Hammock will always hold that title. But I think when you look at all of LSU's players, I think Xavier Pinson, basically pretty much everyone except Efton Reed, I kind of look at him and I say, you expect to get this from him pretty much all year. And I don't think you're going to get a whole lot more from him than what you've seen. But I think with Efton Reed, that he's that one guy that you look at and you say, man, this kid, once he gets about 15, 16, 17 games under his belt, he gets a little more confidence and he gets a little more comfortable. He's that guy that you can see if he's averaging 8 and 7 right now, I could see him getting up to 10, 11, maybe 12, 9, maybe averaging that double-double. But he's that one guy that I look at and I say, okay, he is nowhere near his ceiling. And so I think that as the season goes along, whether LSU is able to continue to get all of the talk that they're getting right now, as far as being, maybe being one of the better teams in the SEC, to be one of those better teams in the SEC when those games roll around. I touched on the outside shooting, but also think that Efton Reed has to continue to pick his game up. And I think he's going to also, because the drop steps that he's making right now, the ball fakes that he's making right now, you don't see too many true freshmen doing that. And when y'all been at most of the games, so I don't know if you've seen this close up or not, but when they show his face up close, it's almost like you can still tell that he's still thinking a lot. He's still processing a lot, to where when he gets to where he's playing and not processing much and just playing, I think that he's that guy who's just going to keep ascending from a talent standpoint and from what he's going to give them this year.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think a big thing for him as well is that he's not being pressured and he's not being thrown into where he has to play 30 plus minutes a game. I like that they have Tari and Darius and that 3-man rotation to where Efton's not, they're not like Efton. You have to be good this night. You have to put up 14 and 8 or else we're not going to win. They have Tari, they have Darius who have both come in and are more experienced guys that they can rely on as well. So like you said, Efton's feeling his way around right now. He's going to continue to improve. I mean, I personally, I've been asked this a lot. Do I think he's a one and done? Probably not, just because, back-to-back centers typically don't get drafted in the first round. And, as a freshman, maybe as a sophomore, you want to continue to develop. And I think that just does wonders for this program to have a guy like that, because you said there's not a lot of freshmen in the country that play like him. There's not a lot of just centers in the country in general that play with that level of poise with the back to the basket in today's day and age. It's really impressive. And that's a big thing that I think they're going to have to continue to improve on, because while I think Pinson and Gaines have done fine, I think I talked about Tari Eason's ability to penetrate and collapse a defense. Efton's ability to collapse a defense himself is going to be big for this team moving forward. I think we covered everybody.
Not everybody can be Chet Holmgren out there, Matty B.
You're right. You're right about that.
You're right about that. They're working towards it. I will say, though, too, because Sonny was talking about this with Pinson, like when could he take over that game? And I looked it up because I kind of remembered your breakdown, Matty B. But there was that TCU game. I think he had like 40 points in that game against Missouri. But there's a lot of games at Missouri where he was getting 20-something a night. Now, there's a lot of games where he was getting 7, 8, and 9. But at least it's out there for him. Like, he's got it in him. I'm with Sonny, though. You see half the time he shoots, and you're like, oh, man, geez. Like, he's just not going to have it tonight.
It's like he pushes it, too. Like
you can see some, yeah. And there were some spots in the 8 games where he had some really big shots that, especially from 3, that you're like, all right, boy, that helped him. And Gaines, too, both of them.
That was a Penn State game, I think, right?
Yeah, Gaines doesn't have it in him to go for 20 a night or whatever, and you don't want him to. I think Pinson would get that green light if he starts to settle in. I would totally think that could happen.
For sure.
20 turnovers, baby.
Man, y'all are some haters, but guess what?
Where's the shirt, Shay? Where's the shirt? He has it.
You need to start wearing that on basketball podcasts.
Yeah. Well, I'd have to wear it backwards. He's not.
And get you a Fletch. Get you a Fletch.
See, the front just comes across very Justin Jefferson-y. Like, no one cares about that. It's I got to wear it backwards, I think. So
you wear wear it backwards. There you go.
My mom last night at the game was like, "Did you get that from the sports shop? Do they have Parker Edwards ones?" I was like, "No, what? No, these are NIL deals over here. You can't get any of that."
Hey, Parker's got to get his NIL up, man. He could sell some shirts.
Hey, I don't see anybody else out there averaging 100% at the line, getting 3 and 5 minutes every time they go out. Just one person
sending 10,000 people into a frenzy every time he touches the ball. I would sell some shirts if I was Parker Edwards. That's all I'm gonna say.
He reminds me a lot of Mwani Wilkinson, except can't play any defense. So they're very similar players in the sense of just no offensive game. They've got very similar offensive numbers. No defense allowed.
The simple fact that Parker Edwards. The simple fact that Parker Edwards is not walking around wearing a walk-on shirt everywhere he goes is bad marketing by Brandon. And I don't know, is Jack even still involved with walk-ons? I'm not sure if Jack is. But for Brandon to not have Parker Edwards in walk-ons gear day and night is amazing.
He gave him that scholarship, and then that night he went out and threw up like 5 points. So, I mean, that was like the career moment.
Oh, okay, yeah. You're right. I forgot about that. Okay, so yeah, he's getting love from him then. He's getting love.
Parker, come hire Go 24/7 as your marketing team. We're here. We are here for you.
Here, this drives home your my Mwani joke. Actually, it was a joke, obviously.
Of course.
Mwani. 21 points a game or 21 minutes a game, 4 points. Your boy Parker, 5 minutes a game, 3 points. So we're not far off from striking the Mwani's offensive game down a bit. You don't want that on your resume. Mwani needs to go out there. Next game, Mwani is going to go drop 25 to make sure Parker is nowhere near him on this stat list.
I'm trying to look up how much Parker averages per 40 minutes. He
No, you
averages
don't want to know that.
20
Well,
points per 40 minutes. There you go.
Wouldn't Parker be a trillionaire in a sense? Except he scores when he's out there. To be a trillionaire, you need 1 minute and then nothing else at all on your entire stat line.
Yeah.
So.
Oh man! All right, we've talked about everybody. We talked about the team in plenty of depth. Like I said, 4 games left until the start of conference play, which starts with Auburn on the road on December 29th. It is a little concerning, not to continue this podcast any longer, but it's a little concerning they just have played so many home games at this point, and it continues with Northwestern State and Lipscomb also at home.
When is their first true road game?
Georgia Tech. Well, Georgia Tech's at State Farm Arena, and I'm assuming that's where Georgia Tech plays their home games. I don't know that, but that's where the
is that where they play them?
That's where the Hawks play.
I thought Georgia Tech. I think Georgia Tech has an on-campus facility.
Oh, do they? So yeah, well they're playing at State Farm Arena, which I'm
because I know in Atlanta, and I know when the Hawks used to play like in the Omni, that Georgia Tech didn't play there. Georgia Tech had their own on-campus facility.
Yeah, that Georgia Tech has a campus facility. They call the McCamish Pavilion. So that'll be a neutral site in a sense. So wait, when is their first true road game an SEC game?
Yes, because Louisiana Tech is in Bossier City, which is a neutral site.
Right.
Yeah. So technically, their first true road game is Auburn. Let's see it. December 29th. So we'll probably do a podcast after the Lipscomb game, probably previewing SEC play, just what we think about that. As far as the basketball side goes, next week we will do a football podcast once Coach Kelly gets his staff in order, and early signing day is almost here, so we will have a podcast on that up next week. So stay tuned for that. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, leave a like, comment, and share it, all that good stuff. If you're on Spotify, follow us. If you're on Apple, leave us a 5-star rating and review, all that good stuff. You can follow us on Twitter at Matthew Brune, at Sonny Shipp, and at Shea Dixon. We appreciate y'all for joining us, and boot up.